Welcome to Choreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and this is our World Championships 2025 preview, part 1, Women and Pairs.
That is a long title for what is going to be a very interesting event.
Yeah, it's World, so it's always a lot. I mean, everything's on the line with this Worlds. Not just podium placements and medals and championship for the season, but also it will decide how many Worlds and, crucially, Olympic spots every federation will get next year. So this is a very important event all the way around. However, just a little bit of housekeeping right before we jump in. A couple of things. One, in this past week, our Choreography YouTube channel passed 1,000 subscribers.
What?
That is a really big milestone for us, and we're super excited about it. So thank all of you who have been with us either from the beginning or even just the last few days. That's a really nice milestone for us to hit for this channel, and we really appreciate that. Also, last episode, a lot of you had some really kind comments and contributions and really thoughtful considerations about the stuff that we were talking about, and really appreciate everything that you guys had to say in the comments, whether we agreed or didn't. It was really nice to see some constructive overall conversation there.
Yeah.
Also, it occurred to me in this last week to do our once annual Googling of our show, just to kind of see what the chatter is in various places. We don't do this a whole lot. We don't really lurk a whole lot online. But I did see a lot of people in various social medias and on Reddit recommending the show, which again is something that helps us out a ton. And I appreciate those of you who enjoy what we do, spreading it to other people. I saw somebody even start a whole Reddit thread that said, "Thank you, Choreography," about our last episode, and ended it saying a direct thank you if you happen to see this. And yeah, we did. We don't actually have Reddit accounts. We were just kind of looking around on there and we saw that. So that's very much appreciated. It's kind of like a year or so ago when I Googled us and then discovered that at least for a moment in time, we were in the top 200 sports podcasts in South Korea.
I knew that's where you were going. That's so...
It was such a random thing to find.
It was, and I love it. I'm flattered, but I was also like, we're in the 200.
Yeah,
So
I don't know. I don't know that I could even find that information now, but it was very amusing then. So in any event, thank all of you who have been with us for the last 3 seasons, and we appreciate your support. We appreciate you sharing it to other people, and we really are grateful for the community that we've been building up and the really thoughtful engagement that you guys have with us and your fellow listeners in the various comment sections. All of that is a big deal to us, so thank you.
Yes.
Jumping into this, the way we're going to be doing this, as I mentioned at the top, we're going to be talking about Worlds 2025. We're going to be talking about women and pairs. There's so much to talk about, so many skaters to cover, and a lot of numbers to look at here that I think are pretty relevant. So we are going to do these in 2 separate installments. And we're starting with women and pairs because they are the first events when this starts a week from now for us. So contextually, it's worth noting we are recording this on Sunday, March 16th. So that if over the next 10 days anybody pulls out or something changes, this is happening before this. So if anything happens, injury or illness or whatnot, and somebody can't compete,
not our fault.
Yeah. This is based on what we know in this moment. So all of that,
holy moly,
context aside, let's talk about the women's competition coming up at Worlds.
Well, we split this up a little bit into who we kind of think are our likely top performers, and then the spoilers. There's so many people competing and so many that are fantastic that have had wonderful victories throughout the season. So we're trying to figure out how to segment this. So the favorites at the top, you have to look at, to start with, the reigning 3-time world champion Kaori Sakamoto. She has the top score of the season, 231.88, which technically makes her, I guess, the favorite coming in, but she has been on and off. She's had wonderful highs and some not so great lows. So I don't really know what to expect from Kaori. I want to believe, because I think having a reigning 4-time world champion in the women's division going into the Olympic season would be incredible for the sport. But do I think that she's really the favorite right now? No, weirdly. And I hate saying that because I have all the love for Cowrie. So yeah, it's complicated.
Let's go back and look at Cowrie's numbers again for a second. Because like you said, 231.88 at NHK Trophy this season. That's a huge number. That leads your next person by 9 points. So that's a significant lead if you're going by just the best performance of the season. However, like you said, inconsistency has plagued Cowrie this season. So if we look back at Skate Canada, she scored a 201.21. If we look at her at Grand Prix Final, where she landed in third, she had a 201.13. Now, we're going to be ignoring like nationals numbers as we talk about these things because they don't matter.
No, in this context.
They're not realistic numbers when you look at international competition versus domestic competitions like that. So when we look at that, I mean, that's a pretty wild swing for her. That's a 30-point swing between the kind of baseline that she had at some of the Grand Prix events versus how she did at NHK. So we use the phrase a lot, it depends on which version of a skater shows up. But I think that is very true for Cowrie here. If she comes in fine form and delivers under pressure, which she tends to do,
exactly,
then we should be looking at around this big score. But if she leaves points on the table, which she has done so often this season, she creates a lot of opportunities for some of the other skaters. So she's your obvious front runner, but you put a big asterisk on that because it's going to really depend on how great her focus is. And for me, if she can hold together that free skate, which I think has been the thorn in her side through most of this season.
If the best version of Cowrie shows up like it often does at the big competitions, then I don't know that she's beatable.
If she comes in at full firepower, yeah, nobody can touch her.
But the person with the most momentum coming in is Korea's Cheon Kim. At 4 continents, a 222.38. That's a massive score. And she feels like she just keeps getting better and getting stronger with every competition this season. So it's really kind of hard at this point to imagine she's not going to have a great competition here and be an absolute threat for the top of the podium.
From the very beginning of the season, Cheon Kim has been kind of my pick for the world champion. When we saw her in the Challenger series, she was incredible, but then she took a pretty significant dip during the Grand Prix circuit. She just didn't really deliver to the level we were expecting. So if we look back at the Grand Prix de France, she only scored a 199.99. Just so shy of 200 is still an excellent score that's very competitive overall during the season. But when your top performer can get a 231, you got to up the ante a little bit. She got a 208 at Cup of China, but she didn't make the Grand Prix final because that was famously Amber Glenn versus Japan.
Yes.
But what we saw from her at 4 continents and then right before that, the Asian Winter Games, was a extremely focused Cheon Kim who looked like she had really chiseled those programs down to exactly what she needed to do to succeed. I don't think that when we saw her at 4 continents or Asian Winter Games that we saw the most beautiful, fluid, emotional versions of those programs that we had seen earlier on, but we did see ruthlessly efficient, technically well-executed programs. I will note, at 4 continents, she didn't get called on some of her cues in the short program. We talked about this in that recap episode where Mona Chiba should have been right in neck and neck with her or maybe a little ahead of her if they'd been called equally on those. And that's always a question mark in any bit of judging. But Cheon has just been so excellent. So if she comes in with that same discipline that she showed at those events, the same kind of game face that she had, she's shooting at silver and then waiting for somebody else to screw up and make that opportunity available to her. Because no other woman so far this season has hit a high enough score to be in competition with that, but she's got to be nearly flawless.
Yeah, but Amber Glenn, to your point earlier, at Grand Prix final, it was her against Japan, and she won. She is still technically undefeated this season. Her highest score was at Cup of China at 215.54. So definitely a bit below the other two in terms of the score that she achieved. However, she has not had 2 clean programs. If Amber can show up with 2 clean programs, which is possible, she could get to those types of numbers and take this whole thing. And we've seen a lot of the Amber that really shows up at competitions, especially the big ones this season. So I'm hopeful. I'm almost afraid to say it out loud feeling with Amber. So I'm hopeful. That's, I guess, the best word for it.
I think when we talk about Cowrie and we talk about Cheon, we're looking at those numbers with them nearly flawless.
Yes.
I think that with Cowrie, maybe there was still just a little bit of,
not much.
Yeah, maybe a double hoop that could have been a triple and a combination or something. Maybe. I can't remember.
I think she was pretty close to perfect.
Yeah.
But yes.
But with Amber, that 215.54 is with leaving some points on the table, like you said, because she's never put together two clean programs back to back. So if she was able to go completely clean, there's a very solid possibility that she could be 5 to 7 points higher than,
if not more.
And we've seen all season that international judges have loved these skates. They love the quality that she delivers. She just has to come out there and look as strong as she can be. When we saw her at nationals, we saw it be a little rough in that competition. So, when we look at some of the skaters where like we see them as ones who rise under pressure, Amber has done that, but it's a long season and we just got to hope that she has trained to peak now in this moment. It is a lot of weight on her shoulders to come in undefeated through the whole season. You want it to be momentum, but sometimes that can be a lot. And I worry a little bit about her back too. I feel like a lot of times we were seeing her coming off the ice, holding her back, complaining about her back hurting. So I'm hoping that with some time to rest and recoup in between competitions, that she's going to be at full strength at this event.
I feel like she's the person who I am most likely going to be holding my breath during both programs. It's inevitable. The next person I think is a definite contender for a medal here is Mona Chiba. At Four Continents, she was ill and had a very, very rough free skate. In general this season, we've seen Mona really show up every time. So even if she is not at the top of a podium, she is a contender always. I think Four Continents was a fluke based on the fact that she wasn't feeling well. Her high score this season is a 212.54. It's right in that range of the world podium last season. So I think all of the stuff we've already talked about needs to be taken with that grain of salt. Like the pressure here is going to be monstrous. So someone as consistent as Mona Chiba this season, I think, has an advantage.
Yeah, Four Continents is an outlier because of the circumstance. She only got a 195.08 there. I would argue that that number is still a couple of points too low. If she was scored the same way that Cheon had been there,
it would have been closer to like 198, 199. Yeah.
Either that or Cheon's number would have come down a little bit. But one way or another, they were very picky about the cues on Moni at that event. But I'm just curious to see how she bounces back from that, because the rest of the season, she's been in a pocket of about 4 points back and forth between 208 and 212. Which is a pretty reasonable place to be. And normally, Mona Chiba is one of the more unflappable competitors. She always just looks really comfortable. She definitely looked more nervous at Four Continents than I'm used to seeing. So she is definitely podium material. And like everybody we're going to be talking about in this group, any of them could mix up on any given day. But certainly that group of four are kind of your big numbers. There's a caveat to that we'll get to in Isabeau Levito, but all of those are very competitive. But when you step down just a little bit, you get to Nina Petrokina from Estonia, who just won European Championships a month or so ago and did it with a 208.18 and a really fantastic free skate. So she's coming in with a lot of momentum with that big surprise win. She also won the Road to 2026 trophy mini event. That one's not as big a number or as competitive an event.
No, but it was still a great continuing of that momentum.
I just think in general, if you've got somebody who's coming to this with total dark horse energy, it is Petrokina, because with a European Championship under her belt, but not having like massive numbers and not having a wildly successful season previously, I think she's coming into this with just probably hope of being top 10, but she doesn't have the pressure on her of the hunt for that podium in that same way, which could work in her favor.
I completely agree. She is in the prime position to take advantage of somebody else's error. Not that she necessarily needs it in order to get bigger numbers, because her Euro score was huge, but I still think her ceiling's a bit higher. So she's going to need some help from the people that have those potential for bigger scores. But it is far from out of the realm of possibility that she ends up on this podium. Again, ice is slippery. And this is the year before the Olympics, the literal most stressful skating event of the quadrennial. So I think that it's anybody's game once you're on that ice. And Nina has that extra confidence of having won Europeans at home. I think that that was such a huge event for her and such a huge moment for her career. She could get a nice little swing up with her scores here if she skates really well.
Yeah, I think that she would have to have the best skates of her life
She would.
To get the podium here.
100%.
But there is something to be said about when somebody finally puts the equation together and gets that it factor. Petrokina has that going for her right now.
Yes.
So if she performed more consistently with how she did earlier in the season, that we'd be looking a little bit lower in this kind of top 10 zone. But I would not put it past her to put a really good showing here and put some pressure on some of those higher level competitors.
But if there is someone who I think we have not seen the best of and we could see here, it's Wakaba Higuchi. She has been making that slow, steady climb back up into the top ranks. If you take a long look back at the 2022 Olympics, she was a contender there.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, it's the same skater. She just had an injury that took her out for quite a while. And now, even though she is making mistakes here and there, her overall skating keeps coming back fuller and better. The most complete version of Wakaba we have not yet seen. And I feel like we're getting closer and closer to it. I would love that to peak, frankly, next year at the Olympics, because I think that's ideal. But I'd love to see a preview here at Boston, because I think Wakaba is an extraordinary skater who has the potential to be on this podium. She has to bring everything she has to it to get there.
I think that with maybe an argument with Cowrie, Wakaba is probably your finest skater amongst
overall
this group. If you look at the quality of her edges, the quality of her artistry,
speed,
the way that she delivers a program on ice is the most mature and complete of all of these skaters. Again, with maybe like the argument for her bestie, Kaori Sakamoto. Wakaba is just such a lyrical, wonderful skater. And that second half of her free skate, when it goes into running up that hill, is just incredible. But like you said, she's left a lot of points on the table this season. We look at her top score from Grand Prix de France. We're looking at 206.08. That's definitely back in the pack here, but that's with some combos that were triple doubles, which has kind of plagued her a little bit through the season. However, other times in the season, we're looking at 196, 195, another 195. She's kind of sat in that pocket, which has been very competitive at certain competitions. But when you've got all the top skaters in an event, if she does a 195, we're looking at a much further down the rankings kind of event for her. So we just really need Wakaba to peak right now for this season at this event.
Yeah.
And if she delivers what she's capable of or what that ceiling would allow, then we could be seeing much greater results. It's just going to be like, can she do that?
But speaking of the can she, will she, won't she? To me, the biggest question mark lingers over Isabella Vito. Because this season, Isabella Vito wouldn't necessarily be amongst these top women. Her highest score this season is a 198.13 back at Nebelhorn. But she's our reigning world silver medalist, and she knows how to show up when she needs to show up. I'm kind of at a loss. I have no idea what to expect with Isabeau.
We've barely seen her this season.
Yeah.
She's basically been out with injury since Skate America. So when we're looking at her at Skate America, she had a 194.83 in third place there. Nebelhorn, she got a 198.13. These are both solid scores, but they're unlikely to do well at Worlds against this roster of women. So we have to kind of step back in a way that we're not really talking about most of the rest of them, which is to look at last season when she took silver at Worlds, which was a surprise. I mean, it surprised us. It didn't surprise the Isabeau stands because they were very confident in her, but she had really had some struggles towards the end of last season, had not done particularly well at Grand Prix final, and was really sitting down a lot of her jumps in a way that was kind of concerning. And so we didn't have high hopes for her. And then she showed up at Worlds and got a 212.16 last year and won the silver. That's amazing. So we know Isabeau is absolutely capable of doing that same kind of thing again. we just don't have a lot to go on because the only thing that we've seen her compete since Skate America was that Road to 2026 trophy where she wasn't throwing triples because she was still kind of working her way back after injury. They wanted to kind of play it safe there. So outside of that, we haven't seen her do a full version of her program since the very beginning of the season. So we just don't know what to expect from her. So I don't know. I mean, if she shows up and does a 212,
she's in the conversation.
Yeah, she's in the mix for sure. If she comes in and does a 194, then, she's going to be lower back in the pack, and it's going to just really be a big question.
Well, I think everyone we've just talked about are the kind of the people that we most expect will be on the podium. But there is a insanely long list of what I'm thinking of as the spoilers.
The dark horse candidates.
The dark horses, who are all exceptional skaters, some of whom are already world medalists. I'm specifically speaking of Alyssa Liu, who got her season's high of 198.55 at Four Continents. But almost tied with that is Anastasia Gubanova, whose 198.61 at Euros just happened too. So they've both got a nice little boost of momentum coming right into Worlds.
Anastasia Gubanova, Goobs, is a skater who can go a little lukewarm sometimes. She is like, when we're talking about like Wakaba and having that beauty of style and aesthetic, Goobs has that. She is elegant. She has incredible lines. She has that textbook version of a skater's style. I never know what to expect from her, though, because she sometimes is brilliant and sometimes can let a program completely go away. And I think that her two programs this season are just samey enough to lose some momentum, particularly in the free skate. What we saw at Europeans was her versus Nina Petrakina, where Nina has this explosive storytelling dune program as her free skate, and Gubanova's really pretty but kind of emotionally void free skate just didn't hold up to it. She's perfectly capable of big numbers, but maxing out at 198.61 this season, I think, puts her at a distinct disadvantage.
And then Alyssa Liu, if I'm being completely honest with myself, might be my favorite skater of the season on the women's side, just because she's such a delight to watch. It's not that her programs are always the ones that I remember the most, although her short program is my favorite short program of the women this season. It's mostly just that she is so obviously skating with an enormous amount of joy. She rediscovered her love of the sport, and you feel it every time you watch her. I hope she never loses it again because, my gosh, is it fun to watch her. Her high score here of 198.55 is not necessarily going to be competitive for the podium unless a lot of bad things happen with the skaters that we've already talked about. However, I still think she is far, far from her ceiling of scoring. This is still her comeback season. She still hasn't been on the ice. I mean, maybe about a year since she's been back. So this is a buildup towards the Olympic Games, hopefully for her. So I don't expect she has expectations outside of making the top 10. Whatever happens here, I just hope she skates clean, gorgeous programs and enjoys it.
Her short program is one of the most emotional and effective programs of the entire season. And
it's glorious.
When it hits, it would bring an audience to its knees. It is so beautiful and powerful and beautifully performed. The thorn in her side has been the second half of the free skate, because she, like you said, is in her comeback season, and you can see that her conditioning has not quite entirely caught up to being able to deliver an entire free skate at full power. If, in the time that they've had off since Four Continents, Alyssa has been able to work on that, get that conditioning up, and we saw her deliver some really nice programs at Four Continents, still just with some room. I think that a 210 is within range for her.
She just has to add some difficulty. Like, she knows her levels were not where she wants them to be on everything. She's still at the death of 1,000 cuts kind of stage. It is very much the conditioning, the levels, and making sure she is maximizing every second that she has out on that ice. I don't know that she's going to get to that 210 here, but man, I would love it. Yeah. I think that would be so amazing to happen at a home country Worlds.
And we know that she is warming up triple axels.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that here.
It's highly unlikely that she's going to do that. But in practice,
in
at Four Continents, she was doing it.
She wasn't landing them, but she was throwing.
Not quite. They weren't coming completely around, but she's working on getting them back. So I expect that to be a thing for next season. But as far as we're looking at the top 10, she is very much a player for that.
Yes. I think top 10 is also totally realistic for Laranaaki Gutman. We've seen kind of an up and down season from her, but she got her first Grand Prix medal at Finlandia with a 198.49, like almost tied with the two women we've just talked about. She's capable of being in the top 10 here. I don't think she is podium threat material right now. Not that she couldn't be in a year, but I just love the progress she's made this season.
I love these programs.
Oh, they're great. Her short program is amazing.
I was so thrilled when she took third at Finlandia and got her first Grand Prix medal. That was a huge deal for her. Aesthetically, I think Laranaaki Gutman is just one of the most interesting skaters in the women. I just think that what we've got there is a real high watermark for her that has not really been equaled through a lot of the season. And so she's going to have to really come out and deliver at a high level. And I know this is a blanket statement for everybody, but particularly for her, she's going to have to dig deep and then bring out that type of performance that she did when she got on that Grand Prix podium in order to really be a threat for that top 10.
I think the same could be said for Kimi Rapond and for Nina Pinzarone. I feel like they're both skaters who are continuously on the upswing. They keep getting better. They are still very young. I feel like they're the capital P potential skaters where it's like they are great. They haven't just leveled up to that level of great they need to be to start really being contenders. That said, I have often felt like Nina Pinzarone is underscored.
Mm-hmm.
I also know she deals with a lot of under rotations, so I know that that has been a thing that has plagued her. Kimi Rapond, I feel like, is just teetering on that cusp. Keeps getting so close, but not quite there.
Just keeps getting edged out.
Yes, and I don't think that this is her world, but at the same time, man, would I love it to be? I think it'd be great. I feel like both of these skaters who are very much in that conversation of that next gen greatness, but I don't know where they're going to land here. I just think a top 10 placement for both will be great. Nina had such a rough Worlds last year. I just remember all the nosebleeds and she had that fall outside of the rink that was terrible. So I just want them to have a great time is really, I think, what I want for them.
Yeah. Nina Pinzarone has one of my favorite free skates of the whole season. But like you said, under rotations have definitely been a problem. International judges have been a little bit more lukewarm on her than I would have expected throughout the season. I think she's terrific. I think Kimi is absolutely fabulous as well. But again, they need a little extra to get them up into serious competition. And I think they're both absolutely capable of it, but I don't think either of them have the track record this season. I think if there's a surprising person to see in this mix, it is Kazakhstan's Sofia Sambalakina. I wasn't really aware of her until I think it was like University Games. And since then, we've seen her several times. And she had a 193.37 at Four Continents with some really nice skates. Sofia is fun. She is fast, powerful, really strong jumps, but a lot of interpretive ability with the music as well. I don't think that she's like, say, like a heavyweight contender at this competition, but I think that it does bode well for her and the Kazakhstan women's program to have her kind of in the mix for this top 10 zone.
Agreed. And there are others, Maddie Skizis from Canada, Asun Yun from Korea, Olivia Kaiser from Switzerland. These are all the people I think that are going to be in that mix hunting for the top 10 placement. We've talked about a lot of women here, so obviously all of them can't be in the top 10, but I think those are the ones who are most likely to be chasing after it.
I think the big pressure that lands on these skaters that are the only representative from their federation, that's where some heavy responsibility falls on their shoulders. When you look at somebody like Maddie Skizis here, who's trying to secure more spots for Canada in next year's Worlds and Olympics, you've got to look at a skater who's topped out at 190.04 in international competition this season. Again, ignoring Canadian nationals because those numbers are fake. And just looking
all
at
nationals are fake is what we're saying.
All nationals are fake. Yeah. Maddie, she has to give the best skates, not only of this season, but maybe of her life in order to really lock in the potential for more spots with the Olympic qualifier event.
Yeah.
And that's true for several other skaters in this. So there's a lot riding on this more than just how you do for yourself. Your federation is depending on you.
Exactly. It's the most pressure for them. But I mean, you've also got to be looking at Japan and the US, where you have 3 women representing their country at Worlds, but they're all very aware of where they place here and how that impacts the Olympic placements for next year. They want to make sure they're securing 3 spots each for the Olympic Games. Or at worst, they're securing 2 and the opportunity to get that 3rd at the qualifying event in September. So immense pressure on all of these women.
Japan, Korea, the US, all of them with 3 spots here.
That's true of Korea too. Yeah.
All of them fighting to keep those 3 spots. Korea has maybe the toughest uphill battle to keep that all locked in, with having Ah Sun-yoon and Hae-in Lee here, who are both great skaters, but are not necessarily going to be big threats for the top 10. There's just a lot riding on it. And with the Japanese skaters, they're all great, but they've all shown vulnerability, and anything could happen. It's going to be tense. I feel like I'm going to be nail biting, and I'm not a nail biter, but I'm going to definitely be biting my nails through this one. It's going to be rough.
I know. And this is the first event at the World Championships. The short program is at noon Eastern time.
What are they doing?
I know.
Why is the women's short program the first event at noon on a weekday?
Somebody's got to do it. And apparently it's them.
This makes no sense.
No, but that's how it's going. And yeah, I'm already stressed. I'm stressed for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our picks in kind of 2 parts for each discipline. We're going to do who we think will win and who, in our heart of hearts, we would really like to win. Those things may be the same, but I don't know how this is going to roll. So we'll see. So let's start picking who we think will win. And I'm throwing it to you, Adrian.
Yeah. I'm going to be so basic here and say that I think the podium is going to be right along the lines of the scores that we've seen this season. And I think it's going to go Kaori, Cheon, Amber. I think that is the likely outcome. If I'm going with my actual pick, though, for gold, I'm going to stick with what I've been saying the entire season, and I'm going to say Cheon Kim in gold. The rest of it, I have no idea, but
you don't have a heart pick?
Well, that is my heart pick. My heart pick is
just Cheon.
Is Cheon Kim in the gold position. I mean, look, I'm a fan of every one of these women. Kaori, Cheon, Amber, Moni, Nina, Wakaba, Isabeau. If any of them won gold, I'd celebrate.
I love that.
There's kind of almost no scenario of any of that, 7 or 8 women we were talking about being on the podium that I wouldn't be thrilled with.
Yeah.
I think they're all great. The only thing would bum me out is if that happened with others falling apart and having like really, really disappointing, heartbreaking skates.
Agreed.
But again, because from the very beginning of the season, Cheon Kim struck me as she was skating like a world champion. That's who I'm going to land with here. I just think for my heart pick, it's Cheon Kim in gold.
Okay.
But I'm throwing it back to you.
Right.
What's your podium and what's your heart?
All right. My podium is Cheon Kim in gold, Kaori Sakamoto silver, Amber Glenn bronze. My heart is Amber Glenn gold, Kaori Sakamoto silver, and Wakaba Higuchi bronze.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, again, that one's going to be tense and just coming right out the gate like, oh my gosh, it's going to be, there's so much writing on that. I'm not prepared for, I'm going to be a nervous wreck through that whole thing.
I know. And to your point, however this plays out, I'm going to be happy because there isn't a mix here that I dislike. I just don't want anyone to have a disaster.
Right.
Let's move on to pairs because I'm still stressed.
Yeah. we're 10 days out for this thing and I'm sitting here like, oh no, I'm starting to feel anxious. My therapist is going to have words about this. Why are you so anxious, Adrian? It's because Worlds is coming up. Figure skating. I'm not competing, but I'm over here just a nervous wreck over it.
Got feelings.
Yeah, I got feelings. Feelings are a little less so in pairs, but marginally because again, this is still full of competitors that I absolutely adore. But the big question right now is which way it would swing between Germany's Hassan Voloden or Japan's Miura Kihara.
Agreed. I feel like there's several different competitions here. I think they're the competition for gold, unless big upsets happen, because there's 3 other teams, I think, who are very, very, very capable of taking that gold away from them. However, if we're just looking at consistency throughout the season, the 2 of them are your top scorers and consistent top scorers. Hassan Volodin have been, I don't think they're undefeated, but they are close to it. Maybe lost once. 218.44, top score of the season. They are in their prime. So I really do feel like they are going to be very hard to beat because I would expect they're going to be flawless. I really can't imagine at this point them making any major mistakes. And I feel like I just jinxed them by saying that, but I don't think so. Like they're just so focused and trained and prepared that they are ready. Miura and Kihara have the bigger ceiling because they have such a complete package. They are so fast. Not that Hassan Volodin aren't, but having now seen them live, Riku and Ryu, we already knew they were special. They are special. I do feel like if they are perfect, they are your champions, but they haven't been perfect. Their scores are so close in terms of their high scores of the season that it's a toss-up.
If you look at Hassan Volodin's 218.44, their best score of the season, they did come in second in Cup of China with a 209.36.
Okay, I thought once. Yeah,
they can swing about that low. However, that 218.44 is with really clean, very solid programs. I can't remember, and this is going all the way back to Nebelhorn. I can't quite remember exactly everything about that.
Yeah.
The worry that I have with Hassan Volodin is that these two programs, when I was talking about earlier with Goobs, how her programs are samey, I feel the same way about Minerva and Nikita, like that these programs are kind of one note emotionally, and they don't really feel very different from last year's programs either. And I think it makes them very steady, but also I think that they get less interesting over time. And that's where my worry lands on it, is that they could deliver really well executed, but kind of boring programs if they just don't punch up the emotional content, versus Miura and Kihara, who are definitely a much more inconsistent team, but their two programs are more interesting as a combo. We've seen them score a 217.32 at 4 continents, which they were mind blown by. And that was with some programs that had some flaws.
Yeah.
And scoring from one event to another is never a consistent thing across this sport. But if they came out there and landed all those singles elements and kept it clean, I really do think that they could eclipse Hassan Volodin. But pressure in a situation like this brings out different types of performances. And Hassan Volodin have had times in the past where they've peaked kind of early and then not had all the gas when they've gotten to Worlds. So it'll be really curious to see how that lands between the two of them. And of course, the next three teams we're going to talk about are all fully capable of taking them. They just haven't had those numbers yet this season.
Right. Like Metalkina and Burlava have technically the third highest score of any team this season with a 213.05. They are an inconsistent team, but they are absolutely capable of big numbers, and they are capable of big numbers at big competitions. Having watched them recently at World Juniors, I think they looked not perfect, but pretty strong. Not their best, for sure. However, I feel like, especially since last year at Worlds really didn't go the way they wanted it to, they have probably a lot of self-inflicted pressure on themselves to kind of prove that they belong there and that they belong on that podium. So I think they're coming in pretty focused on making sure that they're on this podium. So I'm expecting good things from them this year.
My concern with Metalkina and Burlava is that they have not always been the best team under pressure. I think that of all of the top teams we're talking about here, they have shown the most inconsistency in highest pressure situations. Even when they've won things like 2 back-to-back junior world championships, they have done it with imperfect programs, particularly last season's, where it was kind of a disaster that they won with a pretty disappointing score. If you look at their season so far, they've topped out with a 213.05, but 3 of their competitions this season, they scored a 191. So they could be significantly lower than that top tier. What you've got with that team is probably the best running edge out of a thrown triple of any team. When you look at Metalkina's landings, a team with a lot of speed and a lot of quality, but that, we talk about it all the time, suffer from a disconnection between the two of them, where even as well matched as they are as skaters, they don't make the same decisions on the ice together sometimes. And you can see that throw their programs out of whack. They have been competing more frequently than probably any other team in this competition, trying to get more of that experience underneath their belt together. And I think that is in an attempt to get them fully synced up for this moment. But they are the ones that I think have a pretty strong possibility of either going real hard with a great number or falling far further down than we would typically kind of expect.
I think the team that could really spoil everything this season is Conti and Machi from Italy. Their highest score of the season so far is a 2:11.05 at Cup of China, which I remember that competition and I thought that they were slightly underscored there. I think they look so strong and they're hungry. Every time I see them come out, perfect or not, they are absolutely on a mission and they're a connected team again. They have looked frankly better than I've ever seen them this season, which is a surprise to me. It's a wonderful surprise. So I feel like they're probably coming in the ones who want it the most, not necessarily to win, although that would be great, obviously. I think especially going into an Olympics that's happening in Italy, it could be really exciting to have an Italian champion going into an Italian Olympics. So I feel like they've got a fire under them.
I feel like Conti and Machi are a team that was broken and then reforged stronger.
Yeah.
They look so good now. They are passionate, beautiful performers, so much character in what they're doing. And since their own personal relationship has changed and gone through so much evolution, where they're at with it now, it just looks so much healthier than it ever did before. I've been so impressed with them this season.
Same.
I was not expecting a lot from them this season. And over again, they've had some of my favorite pairs performances. I don't know that their ceiling is quite high enough for the top of this podium, but it's definitely high enough for the podium somewhere. And if everybody else slips a little bit, I expect them to deliver really consistent, competent, clean performances here that make them a real threat.
The ones that I just don't know what to expect of is our reigning world champions, Deanna Stellato-Dudek and Maxime Deschamps. I love them so much. I think that they are, God, I feel weird saying that they're the most mature programs, but they are. And it's not just because of their age. They are elegant. There is nobody who is better in the air than Deanna.
She's incredible.
My God, the woman is a beast. And Maxime is such a fantastic partner. I want them to come out here and just deliver a program that could get them their second straight world title. I would be thrilled. Do I expect that? Not really. That said, do I expect them absolutely to be in the mix for the podium? 100%.
I think that this season, beyond just some illness issues that interrupted their Grand Prix final and caused them to withdraw from that, had obviously a big impact on Max. When we saw them at Four Continents, they looked so much stronger and
especially that free skate.
Yeah. But that's the struggle they've had all season, is chaining together two programs that work, because the short program has worked all season while the free skate has been a problem. And that flipped at Four Continents, where they had some trouble with the short program, but then suddenly the free skate was incredible. So if they can just bring those together, then they're right back in the mix for the top. And we just haven't seen it. You know, when they're topping out with a 2:10.92 at Four Continents, we know that ceiling is much higher. We know that they're absolutely capable of competing with Hassan Volodin and Miran Kihara and Metalkina Bralava. No question. It's just we haven't seen it yet this season. So can they peak at the right time? That's the question. And yes, they are so capable of it, but we're just not going to know until they step onto the ice for that short program.
The way I feel about Amber Glenn is the way I feel about them. I just don't know.
Yeah.
And I have so many feelings about it. So I'm trying to just keep it under control.
So much anxiety.
Yes.
But that's really who we're looking at in competition for the top. But there's a ton of really great teams below them, a few of which who on the right day could make things interesting.
Yeah. Cam and O'Shea from the U.S., they're the next highest score of the season with a 2:01.73 at Skate America. They started off this season looking phenomenal. So much better, so much improvement from last season. The past few competitions have not gone their way. They still were in the mix at Four Continents and certainly did a lot better there than they did at Nationals in the U.S. I have no idea what version of Cam and O'Shea that we're going to see. They are a gorgeous team. They keep impressing me more and more with how connected a team they are. They look beautiful on the ice. And frankly, I don't have a lot of expectations here for them. Not in a negative way, mostly I'm trying to just take it as it comes. And I kind of hope that that's the way they're looking at it, as like, this is an opportunity. They had a really, really rough nationals. I want them to just come out here and prove that that was the anomaly.
I think that Cam and O'Shea have something to prove. They need to prove that they're the marquee U.S. pairs team, which they have been for the last season or two, even though they have not been as internationally competitive as we would like them to be. They have so much quality. There's so much about their skating I absolutely love. But like you said, trending a little down over the course of this season, complete disaster at U.S. Nationals. They still were on the podium, but, you know, they're here with their fellow American team of Alyssa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov, who won U.S. Nationals, did pretty solidly at Four Continents, don't have the number in that same competitive zone, though. If we look at Efimova and Mitrofanov, Four Continents, they had a 192.07. So that's the best they've done in international this season. That is not really a threat to Cam and O'Shea's 201.73, but inconsistency plagues a lot of these pairs teams. Cam and O'Shea need to go in here and solidify themselves as a marquee team and to help hold on to those spots for the U.S.
I'm holding my breath for both of them.
Yeah.
Like, I want clean, great skates. Placement is what it is. Just basically hold on to the 2 spots for the Olympics, and anything else is gravy.
And I love Efimova and Mitrofanov.
Me too.
I've been so increasingly impressed with them over the course of this season. I don't know, as far as citizenship goes for Alyssa, whether or not the Olympics is really on the table in this next year, but I increasingly become a fan of them every time we see them. And I would love to see their season really peak here and them to show up in a big way.
Yes, especially since they are from Boston. That's their home club. How brilliant would it be to have that big of a moment here? And I'm not talking about a big podium moment. I'm just saying a great skate. That's it.
Yeah. If they could skate here the way they skated at U.S. Nationals in front of a hometown crowd, that could be a moment again. And I think that could be huge for Efimova and Mitrofanov. But let's step back when we come into scores again. Below Cam and O'Shea, the next most viable team is, I don't want to say surprising because that's not fair to them as a team, but they've come up so far towards the end of the season. It's Canada's Pereira and Michaud. Leah and Trent had a terrific Canadian Nationals.
Yes.
And then killed it at Four Continents.
Loved
ended up with a 198.40.
They should have been higher.
They should have been higher. They were terrific at that event. It's the best I've ever seen them. What we've seen is that team finally really gel. I think it's taken a couple of seasons for it to really come together with like a more veteran skater with Trent and a newer pair skater with Leah. And now I feel like it's really locking in. I still think they don't have enough of technical content to get a lot higher than that number, but they look like they're peaking at the right time.
I mean, there was still in that Four Continents performance, there were still a few errors. So I think their ceiling's a little higher, but I'm just so excited to see where this team goes. I really enjoy these new programs. I love that they're working with Jean-Luc Baker and Olivia Smart. I think that ice dance influence on their programs has been really helpful.
It works on them really well.
Yes, their short program especially, just it sells perfectly. I feel like it is the exact right choice for them. To be honest, I kind of hope they keep it for the Olympic season because I think it's that good. But yeah, I've been really excited to see them the past few months. And I hope they just keep that momentum and keep getting better because to me, they have it factor, and I'd like to see that explored even more.
And I want to see more ice dance influence on pairs.
Oh, yeah. That'd be nice.
Because I think that when you get ice dance centric choreographers laying out these programs and working towards more expression and more connection to the music, I think pairs of all the disciplines can sometimes be so dominated by its technical. Men's definitely has some issue with this as well, but pairs can just look very mechanical sometimes. And when you get the teams who can interpret the music more effectively, it makes all the difference. And having those programs designed that way, it was clearly put together to Leah and Trent's strengths and their best way of expressing themselves musically, but they've grown into those programs as well over the season, and it looks great. Looking at everybody else here, I think that you have a lot of teams that are strong, but again, lots of inconsistency. If you look at Guardio and Ambrosini, who topped out at Lombardia with a 192.47, they just have not been particularly great this season. They have so much performance quality, but
especially their singles elements just never pay off. They're just not that strong there.
Yeah. And you've got teams like Hakan Kunkel or Ganesh and Shigarev or Golubova and Giotopoulos Moore, all these really good teams, but they're all floating in that like 180s zone, which is pretty solid, but is not going to get you the podium.
No, it's basically who can stay in the top 10. That's really what they're looking for whenever they're at that level. So I expect pairs to be very close. I think closer than a lot of the other competitions that we're going to see. I just expect it to be a tight mix because these teams are very evenly matched.
If there's one other team that's lower in the 180s mix, but that I think that does have a higher ceiling, it's Vipinlaw and Digby from Great Britain. They've really impressed me this season. When we saw them at Skate America, they were terrific. They're never putting up fully clean programs with all of the technical that they could be. So I think that ceiling is, if not significantly higher, enough that that margin could change their placement pretty noticeably. I don't know that that will happen here, but I think that they had a really nice Euros. I think they were very successful with that. And I think overall this season has been pretty good for them. Yeah, I'd like to see them land a little higher with this. And then, beyond that, there's, lots of other teams, but I don't know that anybody else is really in that kind of dark horse zone.
No. So I think we're ready for the all-important picks because, our thoughts matter.
It's our show.
It's our show.
Our
yeah,
thoughts
that's
matter
true.
on our show. Maybe nowhere else beyond it, but right here, right now, they do. But you made me go first last time, so this one's on you.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah, turnabout's fair play.
All right. So who do I think is going to get the medals? Yeah, I'm just going to stick with my gut. It says Hassan Volodin in gold, Riku and Ryu in silver, and Kanti and Machi in bronze.
That's real close to mine. I think that Mira and Kihara will take this. I think Hassan Volodin will be in second, and I think Kanti and Machi in third. And I expect Deanna and Max to be in fourth and really close.
Oh, now we have to do our heart picks.
Of all of these performances this season, I mean, Mira and Kihara are my favorite pairs team, but I so enjoy Kanti and Machi. I can't see them necessarily in the gold placement, so it's hard for me to say. I think I still stick with Mira and Kihara because I like these programs and I love their skating so much. But again, it's just like we talked about in the women's. I wouldn't be mad about any of these top five being in that gold position.
I like that you keep going that direction, and I'm like, and here is my top three.
Yes, you've clearly put more thought into this than I've been crunching numbers, which I'm bad at. And then you've been like, where is my heart with all of this?
My heart is with Deanna and Max because it's always hardest to defend your title. So there is a part of me that really wants them to get that because I think that would give them such confidence going into the Olympic season. So I have to give it to them in my heart, although squeaking ever so closely behind them would be Riku and Ryu because my heart is also with them. And then Kanti and Machi would stay in that bronze medal position because I really, really want them to be on that podium this year.
What I think would be the biggest nail biter going into the free would be a kind of three-way tie-ish situation between Hassan Volodin, Mira and Kihara, and Stellato, Dudek, and Deschamps, because I think that's essentially what it was last season. And if you look at 2 years ago, Mira and Kihara are your world champions. Last year, Deanna and Max scrape ahead to take it over Mira and Kihara. So you've got two world champions who are kind of trading it back and forth possibly here. And then Hassan Volodin, who are your Grand Prix final champions, and I believe they were Euro champions, and who have just not peaked at that right time to take worlds yet, and gotta be just reaching for it as well. And then, of course, Kanti and Machi, who have been on the podium before and have been rebuilding themselves back towards the potential for that. And then Medelkina and Berlava, who have not quite landed it in seniors yet at that level and are hungry for it. It can go so many different directions. And I think that it's going to be an intense fight for the podium in pairs.
Well, I think that wraps us up for the first two disciplines. Our next episode is going to be the men's and the dance. And if you thought we were anxious about these competitions, just you wait. because more anxiety is to come.
Anxiety, the skating story. Thank you if you stuck with us this far into the episode.
You're a brave soul and we appreciate you.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments wherever you're listening to this. What are your podium picks? Where do you think this is going? What are you anxious about? Are you anxious like we are?
Are you just excited? Because I'm jealous if you're just excited.
Right. Let us know what you're excited about, who your picks are, who you'd like to see be a surprise dark horse podium win here. And yeah, like Wendy said, we're going to be back with you in the days leading up to the actual start of the competition to talk about men's and ice dance. And so for Choreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we will talk to you next time.
Bye.